Thank you for downloading from Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. Support for this podcast comes from your generous gifts and donations. You can find out more about Ravi Zacharias and the team at www.rzim.org.
Regardless of our differences, it is imperative that we learn to handle this with love. Because if we don't handle this with love, we end up alienating people, and this kind of sexual choice is just one among many other ways in which we can turn away from the pattern of God. In a sense, it's almost become unfortunate that this has become sort of the bullseye target of everything.
Welcome to Just Thinking with author and apologist Ravi Zacharias. These are difficult times for Christians. How do we remain true to our beliefs while culture demands that we ignore them? Today, Ravi continues his defense of biblical marriage as he traces the roots of our move away from biblical principles to secularization. Let's listen as Ravi shares the continuation of his message titled, God's Plan for Marriage.
I have a colleague of mine here in the audience, Sanj, sitting right beside Nabil. We've become very close friends over the years. Comes from a Hindu background and an incredible testimony. He shared it with some of the young people yesterday. I've had him share it all over the globe. He was a student at the University of Akron. First night as a university student, he crossed every line that his parents had taught him to draw. First night. He said everything that his parents had told him never to get into, never to cross, he violated. And by the time a few weeks had gone by, he had picked his own pockets, plundered his own soul, and in his own testimony he would say, you name it, I did it. And I was on a high-speed, destructive life, destroying myself, till one day he literally, when he was watching his marriage fall apart and everything, and watching his two little girls have a father like this, he went into a church and clung to the feet of the pastor and said, help me find answers. I'm a mess. I'm really a mess. He found out that sensual pleasure leaves you emptier than before if it comes without a moral and sacred and spiritual commitment. I've had the privilege of getting to know him, and he stays busy on the road now, not only speaking with us, but interacting with young men who just, if anyone of you is here from the Philippines, Hayden Ko will be a well-known name to you, a remarkable actor who responded when I spoke at a meeting, and then I introduced him to Sanj, and he's blossoming in his commitment to Christ. That's another story for another time. Three things happened from the 60s till now. Number one was secularization. The society wanted to dictate all of its ethical values from a secular viewpoint. Seculum comes from the Latin meaning this worldly. There was no transcendent point of reference. And if you look at Solomon's conclusion, everything under the sun was a chasing after the wind. What he really would have said in our time, everything in the secular lifestyle is a chasing after the wind. You need a transcendent perspective. He said, everything I had came to nothing. I had a harem. I was a horticulture expert. I was a poet. I wrote songs. I wrote proverbs. I knew all of this. But at the end of it, it was a chasing after the wind. My life actually came to naught. Solomon ended up destroying himself and the nation. Today, if you go to Jerusalem and you see the valley of Hinnom, which literally means the place of hell, Gehenna. From there, if you look up, you will see where Solomon's harem once stood. It is ironic, the juxtapositioning of those. What happens in secularism? Secularization has no point at which it can explain to you when shame is legitimate. It removes the sense of shame from our society. And so if you see a young man or a young woman as a model in a pornographic magazine, they ought to cry out with a sense of shame, but they don't, because secularization has removed it. Now it's a profession. It's a means, it's a money-making thing. Don't talk to me about shame anymore. C.S. Lewis, in his book, A Pilgrim's Regress, talks about how he was locked into the spirit of the age. And when he was bound in the spirit of the age, he didn't have answers for the humanistic spirit. Because when he was eating on his breakfast, he commented on the eggs and then on the milk. And when he commented on the tastiness of the milk, the humanist just said to him, you just call it delicious, nutritious. It's nothing more than the secretion of a cow, just like it's urine or whatever. And he said, I cringed. How can you make that comparison? But then they went on to even crasser comparisons between the eggs and what it was in, quote, reality and so on. And finally he says, I was rescued when reason alone came riding on a horse and rescued me and said, you lie, you don't know the difference between what nature has meant for nourishment and what nature has meant for garbage. Remember that line. You don't know the difference between what nature has meant for nourishment and what nature has meant for garbage. Listen to me very carefully here, especially the young. There are 3 or 4 fundamental laws of logic. I won't go into them because I don't want to muddy the waters here. But one of the laws of logic says this. It's got a technical term to it. What it really means is this. Just because 2 things have one thing in common does not mean that they have everything in common. It's a very critical blunder in our time logically. And politicians use this all the time. If somebody is in the depths of horrendous things, he or she will take one thing that somebody else did from the other side of the political spectrum. See, they did this too, so I'm doing. They don't seem to know the difference on the fact that all points are not in common just because one thing is in common. Elephants have ears, I have ears, therefore I'm an elephant. That's the logical blunder we make. And nature has things for nourishment, and nature has intended things for garbage and refuge. Lewis points that out. Secularism leads to a society without shame. Pluralization leads to a society without reason. Secularization, the media became the prime carrier. And you had hedonism as the outworking, loss of shame as the result. In this pluralism, where we lost logic and lost reasoning, the academy became the primary carrier. The academy became the primary carrier, and skepticism became the philosophy. Don't believe anything. Loss of reason became the end result. Loss of shame, loss of reason. And the third carrier then was privatization, secularization, pluralization, privatization. Those of us who had belief in God were told to keep our faith private. Don't bring your values into the public square. Isn't it ironic, fascinatingly, that if you are a secular thinker, you can bring your values into the public square. But if you have faith in God, don't bring your values into the public square. That's an invasion of somebody else's privacy. And so when this whole thing of same-sex attraction started to go rampant, there were 3 responses we used to make. Listen very carefully, and this is my hinge to move into my paper that I want to read for you. We would stand up in university audiences. We knew we were going to be challenged. Whether it was university A, B, C, or D, it always comes up. And so I would respond with one of 3 points. My team members all would bring in their converging viewpoints, and some of them have powerful answers to it. I would say something like this. Number 1, there are 3 types of cultures in which we live: theonomous, heteronymous, autonomous. Theonomous means God's voice is heard within culture. We assume what we used to call natural law, self-evident truths. We don't believe that anymore. Theos, nomos, theos meaning God, nomos meaning law, that he poured it into our hearts. Second was heteronymous, where the handful at the top dictated for the masses below. In political theory, Marxism, communism is a heteronymous culture. The few from the top dictated for the masses below. In religious theory, Islam is a heteronymous culture. The mullahs, the imam, the sheikhs, they dictated for the masses. Heteros meaning another, nomos meaning law. Theonomous, God's law in our hearts. Heteronomous, a few at the top dictated for the masses below. Autonomous, where we are a law unto ourselves and we dictate it for ourselves. So I'll throw it open to the university students and say, what kind of culture are we? Theonomous, heteronomous, or autonomous? They'd say autonomous. I said, all right, if I answer your question on sexuality now, will you give me my autonomy, or as soon as I answer it, will you force your autonomy over mine? So there it is. We have to understand the irrationality and why it became publicly unproclaimable. Secondly, we see sex as sacred. And I'm going to expand upon this. To me, this is something very sacred. For centuries, people have believed this, and every major religion believes this, by the way, not just Christianity. There's a sacredness, meaning there are lines that have to be drawn, separateness, apart from what culture will dictate to you. And the third thing I say to you is, regardless of our differences, it is imperative that we learn to handle this with love. Because if we don't handle this with love, we end up alienating people. And this kind of sexual choice is just one among many other ways in which we can turn away from the pattern of God. In a sense, it's almost become unfortunate that this has become sort of the bullseye target of everything.
Ravi has set the stage, and tomorrow he'll read the blog that millions have viewed on the internet answering the question, what should Christians do about the legalization of same-sex marriage? To order a copy of this message, call us at 1-800-448-6766. When you call, be sure to ask for the title, God's Plan for Marriage. You can also order online at rzim.org or rzim.ca for those in Canada.
Hi friends, my name is Carson Whitenauer, and I'm excited to share about RZIM Connect with you. RZIM Connect is the online home for the global RZIM family. When new members join, they repeatedly say they are excited to meet like-minded people, enjoy great conversations, and grow in their faith. But as one regular member recently shared with a new member, I think you'll find Connect offers you more than you could have ever asked for. For instance, RZIM Connect is the only way that anyone from anywhere in the world can ask nearly all of the global RZIM speaking team their hardest and most heartfelt questions about Christianity and evangelism. We have over 30 members of our team committed to answering your questions for a week at a time throughout the year. And you can ask them questions from your home, at work, while you're on the subway. We're bringing our team to you, wherever you are, through RZIM Connect. And did you know that it is completely free? You've given so much to RZIM over the years. Building this community is our gift to you. Signing up is easy and should take less than a minute. Go to rzimconnect.org today, sign up, and introduce yourself. That's rzimconnect.org. We'll see you soon.
Would you consider committing to pray for our ministry as we strive to encourage and equip Christians to share the gospel with gentleness and respect? To find out more about our ministry or for resources to help you in your Christian journey, be sure to call us or visit our website. And if you'd like to donate to our efforts, you can do so online by clicking on the Donate tab. Just Thinking is a listener-supported radio ministry and is furnished by Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, Atlanta, Georgia.